Hi, friends. I'm Chuck, and this is my good friend Mark from New York City. And today we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to take a break from Acts and talk about a subject that's been in the news lately. And usually I steer clear of this, but I just finished Proverbs today. And there's been a lot of talk about free speech. And I was thinking, as disciples of Jesus, we need to be reminded about what free speech as a Christian looks like. So Mark and I are just going to read some Proverbs. The whole Bible has a lot to say about the tongue and about what we write in social media, but we're just going to look at the Bible, Proverbs in particular, and just kind of comment on what does free speech look like in Twitter as Elon Musk has purchased it for us as disciples of Jesus. So, Mark, if you could read that first proverb.
So, first proverb is death and life are in the power of the tongue, and those who love it will eat its fruits. And this is Proverbs 18:21.
So that's a pretty strong statement. What are you thinking when you hear this proverb?
Well, so I think so you're framing this up being relevant because of Twitter, and I think it's interesting that that's getting so much play because Twitter is not the biggest social media platform, but those that are posting on it are influencing a lot. And so what I get out of this proverb is that the fact that words can go out and actually have a lot of power. And those who love it, whether they love the power of the tongue for its ability to bring life or death, either way, you're going to eat its fruit and it's going to be powerful.
Yeah, and I think we underestimate the power of our words, whether they're spoken or written. And sometimes I've heard people say, you're speaking in a volume of 10, but you think it's a volume of 5. And that's a real warning. Be careful what you say, what you write. So let's go to the next proverb.
So this one is Proverbs 13:3. Whoever guards his mouth preserves his life. He who opens wide his lips comes to ruin.
Okay. So I like to say we need a governor on our tongue because the tongue that wags without restraint is going to get us in trouble. And this proverb says it preserves his life. Any observations on this passage here?
Man, a few things. I think number one, I don't need to say everything that comes to my mind. And so I think just the fact that we can actually, if we don't guard our mouth, we're going to actually say things that may not actually be really helpful to bring forth life in others. And so I think just that basic idea that not everything that comes out of our mouth is helpful or needs to even be said that comes to our mind.
Yeah. I was telling Deb the other day, I'm glad there's no such thing as telepathy because I don't want people reading my mind. I'm repenting half of the time of what I think, So, yeah, good thought. How about the next proverb here?
So Proverbs 16:28, a dishonest man spreads strife, and a whisperer separates close friends.
Now, here's a question for you, Mark. Have you ever seen or heard close friends being separated because of social media? Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Have you ever heard of such a thing?
Unfortunately, yes. That happens way too much, way too often.
Yeah, so this proverb is true. We've seen it with our own eyes in our own life. So if we're not careful with what we say, we can be separating friends and separating our own friends. So
That's right. And then the other piece of that, I think, is it's really easy on social media to share content or to talk about content that we may or may not even fully have vetted or actually looked into, and so we can end up being a whisperer without even realizing we're passing along unhelpful things.
we can be the author of fake news, or
Yes,
at
you
least,
can.
passing on fake news. Yeah. All right. How about Proverbs 10:19?
When words are many, transgression is not lacking, but whoever restrains his lips is prudent.
All right. So I I know that when I talk a lot, I have a great potential of saying something stupid, you know. And so just the volume of words can get me in trouble. This is why I don't go on rants. Rants are very popular these days. Ranting, the proverb says that it can get you in trouble because there's a lot of words. So
That's good. Another challenging thing there is, I think in another era, your words could be forgotten. And so there's forgiveness, there's mercy. Now you can really mess up your witness to Jesus if your words are recorded, and years later that's still affecting your ability to bear witness to him. So it's a careful thing.
yeah, that's one of the biggest things they're asking Elon Musk for is an edit button on Twitter. Because, we're prone to say something we want to take back. But words are like the bullet shot or the arrow flung. Once it leaves, it's hard to get that back, if, most of the time impossible. So, all right, Proverbs 29:20.
Do you see a man who is hasty in his words? There is more hope for a fool than for him.
All right, what comes to your mind when you see that proverb?
A modern version of that, haste makes waste. I think when we're quick to put things out there, we don't have enough time to really share with wisdom. That wisdom actually comes with consideration and carefulness, and social media actually just perpetuates us just putting things out quickly. Not very helpful.
Yeah. Think before you talk. My dad used to say, you let your bowling ball mouth overload your BB brain. And it's like, now that's a proverb. It's a dad proverb, but that's what we're saying here. We got to think before we talk. How many of us have been offended and we want to write something scathing back and then stop, sleep on it, get some counsel, and just think before we write or say something. So
That's good.
all right, Proverbs 17:28.
Even a fool who keeps silent is considered wise. When he closes his lips, he is deemed intelligent.
All right. So, I feel like I try to practice this often because, it's not that I want to be seen as wise. Goes back to thinking, if you're silent, then you're thinking before you talk. What's been your experience with this proverb, Mark?
As it pertains to just social media and how it's and not just social media, but how it's affected our public discourse, I think it's actually platformed everybody, and it's caused us all to think that we need to comment on everything and that everybody wants to hear what we think about everything. And sometimes silence is actually saying something more effectively than saying something.
Yeah. Words, the old saying, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me.
Yeah.
That's not in the Bible, and I don't think it's true. Words do hurt. So, all right. I love this one, Proverbs 15:1.
A soft answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger.
Okay. What do you say about this one?
We can actually how we say things and how we talk actually really does matter, not just what we say. And as it pertains to this topic of social media or the means in which we communicate, we've got to be really careful because we can be misinterpreted pretty easily.
Yeah, when I think about this verse, what automatically comes to my mind is sports talk, TV shows or radios where people are just angry. It's a game. It's sports, I know there's money involved, and that's probably why people get so spun up. But let's face it, anger is selling today. It's one of those emotions that gets people riled up, and it makes money, but it destroys us. And maybe a soft word would be more appropriate than to get into fisticuffs, on a sports show, All right. Proverbs 17:27.
Whoever restrains his words has knowledge, and he who has a cool spirit is a man of understanding.
Yeah, I think of that. I like that. A cool spirit, How many times have we felt the heat in our ears and on our forehead, veins popping out? Those are the danger signs. You're fixing to say something you will regret, or type something in Facebook or Twitter that you're going to really regret later.
Right.
And yeah.
Yeah, I think that kind of speaks to a learner posture too, that
Yeah.
When we're postured that way of restraint and having a cool spirit, the result is a person of understanding.
Yeah. All right. Proverbs 11:12.
Whoever belittles his neighbor lacks sense, but a man of understanding remains silent.
Belittling. It seems like a national sport for Americans.
Yes. Yeah.
Maybe it's worldwide pandemic of belittling one another. But why do you think people do that, Mark? Why do you think people have to put other people down?
It's an identity thing, isn't it? That we feel like we need to, that our identity really, in the social media world, our identity is attached to the next thing, the next feedback that we get from others, or the next like or retweet or whatever it might be, and putting others down. We attach our identity that pushes us up. So there's not any space for me. I've got to put them down.
Yeah, using people as a stepping stone to lift ourselves up, It always ends poorly. And then Proverbs 21:23.
Whoever keeps his mouth and his tongue keeps himself out of trouble.
Isn't there enough trouble in life that we don't need to borrow more trouble with our mouth or with the things that we write? We share the gospel, we talk about the brokenness of this world. And part of the brokenness is because of the things we say and write. You know, that causes a lot of brokenness. So,
Good.
what's been your experience in this here, Mark?
You know, I've got a lot of things to do that God's called me to do, and I don't need extra trouble. I think that's what I'll say.
Yeah.
So people go looking for trouble, they get really distracted and add a lot to their life. So I don't have time for that.
Yeah. And from experience, I've made this mistake, and I know this proverb is true. And in fact, all of these proverbs are true. And we would be remiss if Mark and I didn't bring it back to Jesus, because Jesus has things to say about things that we say. So Mark, read Luke 6:45 for us.
It says, "The good man out of the good treasure of his heart brings forth that which is good, and the evil out of the evil brings forth that which is evil. For out of the abundance of his heart, his mouth speaks."
So Jesus is really saying what we say, what we write is a indicator, a serious indicator of what's on the inside, what's going on in our spirit, in our heart, in our mind. And so it would do us good to check the heart when we're writing or when we're speaking. Where is that coming from? And quite frankly, I'm shocked at some of the things that are put on Twitter or put on Facebook by believers, by followers of Jesus. It's an indicator of what's happening on the inside. Mark, any other insights on what Jesus is saying here?
I think you hit it home. We just know Jesus to be a guy who's after the heart, and so we need to be too.
Yeah. Now, there are hundreds of verses about speaking, communicating in the Bible, and I'm going to put a link in the video description below so you can check out some of them. But Mark, what advice would you give to people as we finish up this video? And Proverbs is so rich with how we should conduct ourselves in communication. What summing up advice would you give to people that are listening to this video?
I think we go back to what we just read last there, that Jesus looks at the heart. So we've got to start there. But I think in just now going back to practical experience and applying this, that doesn't mean that I just neglect my tongue. And so I've got to be vigilant over my tongue is how I would sum it up. But also I've just learned I can actually pray and say, Jesus, would you help me? Help me guard my tongue to stop the words. And when I've prayed that, I've found it'll come to right here. And oftentimes I'll be able to stop it before it comes out, or at least get a chance to think twice. So that would be my thought. That
is so good. You know, I'm a fan of free speech. That's part of our Constitution, and I'm a big fan of it. But with great freedom comes great responsibility. And you can't disconnect those two, freedom and responsibility. Otherwise, you're going to have chaos, mayhem, brokenness in the nth degree. And so we have to be responsible for our words. And I'm a big fan of Elon as well. And I don't know whether I'm glad or what I think about him having Twitter. I just know for sure that if we as believers in Jesus, followers of Jesus, if we're not careful with what we say and what we do, we're in danger of misrepresenting our master. And so really I wanted to do this not because I'm promoting Twitter or Elon Musk. I wanted to do this with Mark to promote a biblical view of how we ought to communicate. It's so important. And Mark, thanks so much for doing this with me. It's kind of a timely message. As you know, I just had burning in my heart that I need to remind us of our responsibility with this thing called free speech. All right, we love you. God bless you. And until next time, keep following Jesus.